What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to the channel, Wealth Hacker Labs. I'm your gracious host, Jeff Rose. Many of you are still waiting for your $1,200 economic stimulus check to arrive. 80 million got a direct deposit, 70 million are still waiting. You got the payment status not available. You got people saying that checks are going to be mailed out on the 24th with really no confirmation of that. I've actually had a few people share in the comments that they said that their check was going to be mailed out and they actually already got it. So, all right, that is awesome news. But for those that are still waiting, or those that already got your check and you're still struggling trying to make ends meet because your job is still shut down, or you are furloughed, or you are unemployed, laid off, whatever the situation may be, and if you're still trying to figure out how you're going to pay the bills, one of the other provisions of the CARES Act that was included that many people don't know is that there was an update to the 401k plan. And the updates had to do with how you could either borrow from the 401k plan or how you can take a distribution or cash it out. So what were these key changes? So prior to the coronavirus, prior to this whole pandemic, you could borrow from your 401k plan if your employer allowed it. And the way that it was written in the IRS code was that you could borrow up to $50,000 or 50% of your 401k balance. So if you had $50,000, then you could borrow $25,000, or if you had $100,000, then you could borrow $50,000 or that 50%. And then based on whatever you borrowed, there was an interest rate attached to that, and then you had to pay that money back over time. And if you didn't pay that money back in that stated time period, then you would be assessed that 10% early withdrawal penalty. So what were the changes in regards to borrowing from your 401k? Well, instead of $50,000 or 50%, the IRS changed it to where you can borrow up to $100,000 or 100% of your balance. So in that first scenario, if you've got $50,000 in your 401k plan, you can now borrow up to that $50,000. So that is a big change. The other change is that they are not requiring any of those loan paybacks, any of those loan payments until after 2020. So they have suspended all payments back to these 401k loans for the rest of the year. And for many of you, like, that is a big deal to be able to have access to your 401k, not have to make any loan payments for the rest of the year. Now, the one thing I do want to say, and I thought about saving this until the end, but I would like to say is that in normal situations, I am never an advocate for borrowing from your 401k plan or taking a distribution. And that's just with my background as a financial planner. I've witnessed so many situations where people were borrowing money or taking money from their plan when they really didn't need to, that they could have cut back on their spending. They could have just actually tried to budget or lived within their means, and it wouldn't have been an issue. So in those situations, like I just got, don't borrow from your 401k plan. Like, stop, trade in the brand new car. Like, you don't need that. Now, this is an entirely different situation. Like, this is a global pandemic, which you all know. And in light of what's going on, no judgment passed if you are in a situation where it's beyond your control because you can't go to work, because you had a good job, but you got laid off or you got furloughed, and this is what you need to take care of your family, to take care of you. So if that's the case, then do what you got to do. So that is in regards to borrowing borrow from your 401k plan. You can borrow up to 100% or that $100,000. Whenever payments do start back, if you do not pay back the loan, there will be that 10% early withdrawal penalty. So that's borrowing. Now, the other thing that you could do is if you have a old 401k plan that's still in the 401k, you haven't done anything with it, you can take a distribution from your plan. Like, that is not an update. That is something that you could have done in the past. But before, if you were under the age of 59 and a half and you took money out of an old 401k plan, you would have to pay a 10% early withdrawal, and they would take out a minimum 20% for federal taxes. Now with that whole federal tax thing, that's just what they did that to help people out, because most people just thought, oh, I'm gonna just take the money, I'm gonna go spend it. And then at the end of the year, whenever they're doing their taxes, they realize, oh crap, I should have set some aside to pay Uncle Sam, and they didn't. Now they're on the hook for a several $1,000 tax bill. So the IRS said, hey, we're just gonna go ahead and make it 20% so that people don't have to try to figure out how much it is. You could take more taxes out, and so if you knew you're in a higher tax bracket, then that would help alleviate some of that tax burden at the end of the year. And if you're in a lower tax bracket, then you would get a refund. So what is the big change? And this is a very big one. The IRS, for the time being, has eliminated the 10% early withdrawal penalty. So this is one of the big updates in the CARES Act. So there is no longer a 10% penalty to take the money. In addition to that, the 20% withholding, prior to all of this, if you had to pay all that tax by the end of the year, whenever you filed your taxes, like that was part of your tax bill. So now, instead of having to pay that at the end of the year, they are, and when I say they, the IRS is extending that 20% tax over a 3-year period. So they're giving you up to 3 years to pay that back. Like, that is huge. So if we go back to somebody that has $100,000 and they need it for whatever reason, they need to borrow that from their 401k, and they take that full they take a they take a distribution, and they've taken $100,000 out, and so they're on the hook for at least $20,000 in federal tax. They don't have to pay a 10% penalty, so there's $10,000 more that they have to use to help float whatever they need to float. And now they can pay back that $20,000 over a 3-year period. Like, that is a big deal. Now, to qualify for these update on the provision on the 401k plans, there are certain criteria that you have to meet. Now, as I share what these criteria are, I think you'll see that it's pretty easy. The IRS, the government has made it pretty easy that you can check one of these boxes. So the first criteria is that you or your spouse or a dependent has been diagnosed with the coronavirus. Now, that might not apply to you. If it does, Godspeed. I hope that you're doing well. I hope you're on the way to recovery. If this doesn't apply to you, then go ahead and stay tuned, because I think the next one probably will. You've experienced adverse financial consequences as a result of being quarantined, furloughed, or laid off, or your work hours have been reduced. Anybody want to raise their hand on that one? I think that applies to a lot of Americans right now. Another criteria is you're unable to work because of a lack of childcare. So you got nobody to watch your kids. I'm raising my hand on that one too. You had to close or reduce the hours of a business as a result of a virus. Many people could check that box. Or you've been financially impacted by other factors determined by the Treasury Secretary. As you can see, I mean, they made it pretty general so that anybody, for the most part, should be able to apply this, because they know that people are hurting. But I do want to challenge you that if the 401k, whether you're borrowing or taking a distribution, taking your money out, this does need to be a last resort. Try to figure out another way if possible. If you can't, totally understand, do what you got to do. But as a former financial planner, like, this is one of the hardest things for me to see whenever I saw a younger person, especially, taking money out of a 401k plan, because I didn't see them taking out $1,000 or $10,000. What I saw was the future value of that money. For example, if somebody had $10,000 in the 401k plan and they invested that over a 25-year period and made a modest 7%, we're talking almost $55,000 that they would have later on. So I don't see $10,000 being taken out. I see $55,000 or $250,000 or $500,000 or $1 million if they are cashing out their retirement plan when there really isn't a justifiable reason. Once again, this is an entirely different situation. So as long as you're not taking the money out to buy a new car, you and I, we're good. But if you are taking the money out because you've got kids that depend on you, because you've got a roof over your head that you got to pay the mortgage on, totally get it, totally understand. Hope that everything is going to get back to somewhat normal, whatever that is. Like, still a lot to be seen. But this is information for you on 401ks in regards to the CARES Act. I'll have a link in the description that has more of this, all of the criteria that I shared, some of the numbers I shared, in case that didn't all register, obviously you can leave a comment or leave a question in the comments and I'll do my best to get back to you. All right, y'all, this is Jeff Rose reminding you that it's your money, it's your life, and only you can make it awesome. Till then, peace.